Hi, I'm Gary Comer with Soul Whisper Ministries. I have my dear friend Scott Brennan with us, who's going to share some of his faith-sharing story here tonight. And tonight we're going to zero in on one aspect of faith sharing that seems counterintuitive. It's disclosure. And some people may say right off the bat, do we need to bare our souls to save souls? And my answer to that is yes, we do to some degree. If we want to be effective in going to some deeper places, disclosure is a very powerful way for us to further relationship. And that's what we've been talking about here, the relational evangelism process. I teach and espouse a relational approach to evangelism. I believe that's where influence lies. And influence comes from out of the depth of relationship. And so disclosure is a very important part. And I want to just bring out a few things that disclosure does. One is that it's natural. There is no more natural way to share about faith, to talk about faith, than to talk about yourself. Most people struggle to find the words about their faith. They struggle to figure out how can I communicate something about Christ that sounds meaningful to someone else, but it comes to them in a way that's personal and is received. And when we share about ourselves and what Christ does for us, or disclose something that's vulnerable in our lives, it is a very natural way to communicate gospel truth. But we also see some other dynamics. One is that it deepens the relational bond. And I do want to say that there are some meters and measures with disclosure. We don't want to just dump on people. We don't want to share our whole life in the first time we sit down with someone. There are appropriate measures that come as the relationship develops, but it is a very powerful thing when people share something that's vulnerable, when they open themselves up to share their real life. And that deepens a relationship bond. Another thing is we see disclosure shaping their heart towards humility. They begin to see, wow, I have sinned too. And the disclosure draws that out, and their heart is that much more prepared for them to ultimately see Christ, see the Savior, and want to respond to Him. Another thing that it does, I think, which is very significant, is that it really gives a true picture of the Christian faith. The Christian faith is not about us being good all the time. It's about the fact that we need the power of Christ at work in us, and that is true every day. And I want to say some people have a very, very high view of, who a Christian should be, a person who never has any kind of issues or struggles. But I want to admit that is so far from my reality. I am far from being like Jesus in a lot of ways. And I see my own self-centeredness. I see my reactiveness with my wife. I see at times when I'm stingy or begrudging of giving love. I see all those things. And I think as Christians, we can be very sensitive to those things and use that really in a leveraging kind of way to be able to talk with others about our need for Jesus and what it really means to have a relationship with Christ. Scott had an amazing summer here this last summer, off in Boston, ended up leading a few of your friends to Christ. Right. But why don't you tell just a little bit about that?
As I shared before, I attribute a lot of that to your book and Soul Whisperer, and I just really felt like that propelled me into taking some action last summer that I hadn't been taking. And, I think as a new Christian many years ago, I was gangbusters, sharing my faith. I think it was sort of shotgun approach, got lucky, and the Lord blessed that. But over time, I kind of got away from that, and your book really helped me hone in on some of the skills and how to develop relational. And I realized, hey, I'm in relational ministry with a bunch of people, and acquaintances or sort of friendships that I was developing over time with non-Christians. Each summer I went back. And so one of them I was going to share tonight was picked up on that kid, that a young guy, 19, Starbucks, I think he was 19, maybe he's 20, but, Starbucks kid and nice guy. He's surrounded by other Christians at the Starbucks. A lot of Christians, and there's a local Christian college. But he'd see me in there reading the Bible or books. I struck up conversations with him, sometimes after work, got in coffee with him. And every time I was with him, I really, over this last few summers, I thought, this kid he's going through some struggles, and I could see he maybe he had some hurdles he wanted to get over. I think he wanted to identify with these other Christians, and so this was my chance to push that forward, and I was able to take some steps based on some tools that I found in your book. So one time after work, he got off, went next to the restaurant next door, and I really just pushed it forward. So, and use disclosure.
What specifically did you talk about there?
Well, I really wanted to have a sounding board for him. I wanted to be the sounding board. I just wanted to. I asked him, "Do you think is there anything maybe holding you back from coming to the Lord? Is there anything you wanted to share? Just one of those opening questions." Yeah. I think I stole it from your book, but and he said, "Yeah, he finally got open a little bit." He just said, I think he was testing my reaction. He says, "I'm kind of struggling with some same-sex attraction issues And he looked at me like, "Are you going to reject me now?" Or, and I just listened. But in the conversation, right then, I knew where I needed to go. And I felt this thing about a father wound. And I asked him, I said, "Can you tell me a little bit more about before we talk about that, a little bit more about your family? What's your relationship with your family, mom, dad?" And he teared up. Mm-hmm. And especially on the dad. So I said, I just want to, if it'd be okay, I said, "Could I share a little bit with you about my dad and my relationship with my dad growing up?" And I shared a specific incident with my dad before he had left the house and before he left our family. And that particular incident, how I'd always been seeking his approval and striving after getting love from my dad. And I shared an intimate experience where it really crushed me as a 12 or 13-year-old kid. And it tore him up. And right after I shared that, he just started opening up. Mm-hmm. "You sound like you're talking about my life." And suddenly got off the SSA issue and onto the real heart of the matter, I believe, which is a father wound. And that all of this was wrapped up, this hurdle that he needed to get over was wrapped up in his picture of his dad and how he was then picturing God. So it was very much a disclosure led to other disclosure. And through that, I was able to just allow him to share, to bring that place where he could just come all the way out and expose the fears and expose the rejection, expose the sense of abandonment and shame. Yeah. And it was much easier.
Yeah, wow, sounds very, very powerful. Very powerful time. And you were able to lead
from that
him
went
to
right
the
into
Lord?
into the conversation. I said, "Is there anything that you think, because this is where he meets us. Is there anything holding you back at this point?" And he said, "Yeah," in tears. And we prayed, and it was easy to, it was just like the fruit was really ripe. But it was from that place of disclosure. Yeah. And I thought, gee, this is so easy when you're flowing with this and you have a tool that you're putting into practice. So it was exciting. Yeah. That was only one of a few in the summer, so I was ready to go.
Yeah. Well, it's so exciting to see it. Thanks for sharing. Yes. But it's so incredible to think about the power that happens when we're able to connect at that deep, intimate, personal level about something that is such a big factor of our life. And then also just to bring Christ into that and to be able to point the way forward to Him. So that is so great. That's the power of disclosure. We're going to talk more about this in the upcoming sessions as well. You're going to see glimpses of it, but we're excited. Thank you, Scott, for sharing. And we're praying for everyone to get out there and be real for the gospel.